My name is Tessa Monroe, and I was 29 when I learned that being the dependable daughter in a family can feel a lot like being a locked drawer everyone thinks they have the key to. They told me there wasn't enough budget to include me on the family trip. That was the sentence my mother used, soft and careful, like she was wrapping a knife in velvet. "It's just a small break, honey," she said over the phone. "Nothing fancy. Not really a family reunion." I remember standing in my kitchen with a half-washed coffee mug in my hand, listening to her explain why my parents, my younger sister Mia, my other sister Ella, and a few cousins were all going to the coast without me. She made it sound practical. Tight budget, limited beds, too late to add another flight. I told her I understood. That was always my role. Understand. Help. Stay quiet. Don't make things uncomfortable. 3 weeks later, I opened my banking app because rent was coming up, and my car had started making a sound like a blender full of screws. And there it was. $8,200 gone. For a few seconds, I just stared. My first thought was fraud. Maybe my card had been skimmed. Maybe some stranger had emptied my account while I was buying gas or ordering takeout. Then I opened the itemized charges. Southwest flights to San Diego. A beachfront Airbnb. Grocery delivery. Rental van. Chef services. 3 days. My skin went cold before my brain even finished putting it together. That was their trip. The tight budget trip. The one I wasn't invited to. I opened Instagram with shaking hands, and there was Mia's post from that morning. Matching sun hats, pool floats, drinks with little umbrellas. My mother smiling in a white linen shirt, like she hadn't just helped drain her daughter's bank account. I had even liked the picture. Out of habit. Out of love. Out of stupidity. They didn't have my card physically, but months earlier, my mother had begged me to add her as an authorized user, just in case, after my dad's truck broke down. I had also helped them set up travel accounts using my login because, back then, I believed family access meant emergency access, not luxury vacation access. I sat at my desk and laughed once. It came out ugly and empty. Then I clicked dispute. One charge after another. Flights. Airbnb. Van. Chef. Groceries. I removed my mother's access, changed every password, kicked every device off my accounts, and blocked future charges. At 2:41 p.m., my phone buzzed. "Mia, the villa is locked. Help." I looked at that message for a long time. Then I typed back, "Budget is tight, remember?" After that, I sent one message to the whole family group chat. "You stole from me. I've reported the charges. Do not contact me unless it's through a lawyer." The calls started instantly. Mom. Mia. Ella. Dad. Even my father, who hadn't called me directly in months unless he needed help with something heavy or expensive. I let every call ring. Then came the texts. Mom said I was overreacting. Mia said it was a misunderstanding. Ella said, "Please just call before this becomes a legal thing." But it already was a legal thing. They had made it one when they decided my money was easier to ask forgiveness for than permission. By the next morning, the vacation was over. Apparently, paradise loses its charm when the locks change and the chef stops arriving. At 9:17 a.m., Ella showed up at my door, holding a bakery bag from the place they all knew I loved. She looked tired. Guilty, maybe, or just scared. "We need to talk," she said. I didn't let her in. She stood on my porch and told me no one meant to hurt me. Mom thought I wouldn't notice. Everyone knew I was doing okay. It wasn't personal. Then she said the sentence that stayed with me. It's not like you're struggling, Tessa. I think Mom assumed you wouldn't really mind. I looked at the bakery bag in her hand, as if pastries could cover theft. By evening, they came in waves. Mia cried over the phone and said she didn't know how to say no once Mom planned everything. Dad texted that family handles things internally. And my mother finally came to my porch, arms folded, face stiff, saying she was sorry if it felt wrong. If. That tiny word told me everything. They weren't sorry they stole from me. They were sorry the door locked behind them. The next morning, I sent one final message. I won't press charges this time. I forgive you. But if anything like this ever happens again, I will protect myself however I need to. The replies came fast. Thank you. We knew you'd understand. You're doing the right thing. They made it sound like I had passed a test. For a while, I thought maybe it was over. But in my family, forgiveness didn't mean closure. It meant permission. 3 weeks after I forgave them, I noticed a charge from an urgent care clinic under Ella's name. At first, I thought it had to be accidental. Maybe one of my old cards was still attached somewhere. Then came a dental bill, a hotel stay, a utility payment from a company I didn't even use. Each time, it was just small enough to make me second-guess myself. A few $100s here, a few hundred there. Like they were testing how much they could take before I snapped again. When I confronted Mia, she sounded annoyed more than guilty. Oh my God, Tessa, it was just for one night, she said. My friend's birthday got messed up and we didn't have anywhere else to stay. Like that explained why my account paid for it. My mother called 2 days later, asking if I could temporarily cover the gas bill because things were stressful at home. Then the internet. Then electricity. One afternoon, she casually mentioned, I put your account on autopay for the utilities because it was easier. Easier for who? I kept telling myself I'd deal with it tomorrow. Then next week. Then after work. But every time I tried to confront them, I felt exhausted before the conversation even started. I wanted peace more than justice. And they knew it. That was the worst part. They knew exactly how far they could push me before guilt made me cave. By the 4th month, I sat down with my laptop and added everything together. Nearly $10,000. 10,000. And somehow, not once had anyone said thank you. By then, I had stopped reacting whenever a new charge appeared. I would just stare at the screen with this numb, detached feeling, like I was watching someone else's life unravel. A mechanic bill. Groceries. Random subscription renewals. One payment for Mia's friend's car repair because he didn't have a credit card. Every explanation came wrapped in manipulation. Mom's stressed. Dad's overwhelmed. You know how hard things are right now. The strange thing was, nobody ever asked how hard things were for me. I started pulling away quietly. I stopped answering texts immediately. Stopped volunteering help. Stopped checking the family group chat every hour like some emotional employee on call. That's when the guilt tactics became sharper. Mia texted me late one night. If you loved us, you wouldn't make us beg. I stared at those words for a long time in the dark. Not because they hurt, because they sounded rehearsed, like something my mother would say. That night, I sat at my tiny kitchen table with a cold cup of tea and wrote a message I had been carrying inside me for years. Not angry, just honest. I told them I was done being the family safety net. I told them the money wasn't even the main issue anymore. It was the way they only saw me when they needed something. I wrote that every charge, every guilt trip, every excuse hollowed out whatever relationship we still had left. Then I told them something none of them expected. I was leaving. For months, I had been quietly saving whatever money I could protect from disappearing. I found a sublet apartment in Queens through a friend of my boyfriend Kyle's coworker. It wasn't glamorous. Tiny kitchen, 3 flights of stairs, windows that rattled when the subway passed. But it was mine. And most importantly, it was far enough away to breathe. I told them I'd be gone in 2 weeks. I said I needed real space. Not cool-down space. Not family argument space. Real distance. The replies exploded almost immediately. Mia called me selfish. Ella texted in panicked capital letters. Please don't tell Mom yet. That sentence alone told me everything. Not, please stay. Not, we'll fix this. Just protect Mom from consequences. Dad's message was the longest. He said life was hard and family leaned on each other. He accused me of running away, like surviving your own family was cowardice. My mother said nothing. Silence from her was always more frightening than yelling. 2 weeks later, I packed my apartment into a borrowed pickup truck. No one came to help. No hugs. No goodbye. No drive safe. Just silence. Kyle helped carry my boxes up the stairs in Queens while complaining dramatically about my books weighing more than furniture. At one point, he dropped onto the floor, breathing hard, and said, "If you own one more hardcover, I'm breaking up with you." I laughed so suddenly it startled both of us. His ex-girlfriend used to joke the same way, he told me later. Teasing without cruelty. Love without transactions. That night, his girlfriend Natalie brought over a tiny plant for my windowsill and said, "This one's impossible to kill." I almost cried over that stupid little plant. Because nobody had given me something without expecting repayment in so long that kindness itself felt suspicious. Then came the quiet. Week 1. Nothing. Week 2. Nothing. No calls. No messages. No one asking if I made it safely. Part of me hated myself for still checking my phone. Then week 5 arrived. Mia texted first. "Hey, I hate asking, but I need $300 for an emergency vet visit." I sent it. Immediately. Like muscle memory. 2 days later, Ella needed rent money because her roommate bailed. I sent that too. Then Mom texted asking for help with the car registration because Dad was too busy. I paid that too. Every payment came with the same lie I kept telling myself. Maybe this will fix things. Maybe this is the moment they finally realize I care. But every dollar only confirmed what they already believed. No matter how far I moved, they still owned access to me. And the worst part? I was beginning to believe it too. One night, after a brutal shift delivering food in freezing rain, I came home exhausted, feet throbbing, stomach empty. I opened my phone and saw another Venmo request from Mia. $250. Description: for tonight, urgent. That was it. No explanation. No greeting. No shame. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the request while rain tapped against the window. Then Ella texted, "You ignored Mia. Are you seriously leaving her stranded over a couple $100?" Something inside me finally cracked. Not loudly, but quietly, like ice splitting under pressure. I opened the spreadsheet I'd secretly been keeping since moving. Every charge. Every request. Every excuse. $10,263 in 5 months. Car repairs. Birthday dinners. Groceries. Utility bills. A therapy copay that turned out to be Mia's manicure during a girls' weekend. I scrolled through the list, feeling hollow. Not angry anymore. Just stupid. I had spent years believing if I gave enough, eventually they would love me correctly. That they would finally see me as a daughter, a sister,
A person.
instead of a backup debit card. Then Ella sent another message. Just don't tell Mom you're serious, okay? She can't handle that right now. I stared at the screen and finally understood. Nobody cared what I could handle. I called Ella immediately. She answered fast, probably expecting me to fold. I'm not sending any more money, I said calmly. Silence. Then a sarcastic laugh. Wait, seriously? You heard me. You're cutting everyone off just like that? No, I said quietly. Not just like that. After years of this. Her voice sharpened instantly. You're being dramatic. No, I said. I'm overdue. Then I hung up. The calls started within the hour. Dad left a voicemail about family loyalty. Mom texted only one sentence. I hope you're proud of yourself. For the next few days, I kept my phone on silent. Nobody asked if I was okay. Nobody asked why I'd finally reached my limit. They only talked about what I had stopped giving them. And when they realized the money was truly gone, they disappeared. Completely. The silence lasted through Thanksgiving. Then Christmas. Then my birthday. No calls. No invitations. No awkward holiday texts pretending everything was normal. It was as if I had been erased from the family the second I stopped being useful. And honestly, that hurt more than the money. Some nights in Queens felt unbearably quiet. The apartment walls were thin enough that I could hear neighbors arguing, babies crying, televisions playing game shows through the vents. But somehow, my own silence still felt louder. Kyle tried to distract me when he could. He'd bring takeout after my late shifts and sit cross-legged on my couch complaining about his boss or showing me ridiculous videos online. Sometimes he'd stay the night, and for a few hours, I'd almost forget the ache sitting permanently in my chest. But even with him there, part of me kept checking my phone, waiting for a real apology. Not excuses. Not requests. Just one honest message saying, we were wrong. It never came. Then, one Wednesday afternoon, almost 7 months after I stopped sending money, my mother texted me out of nowhere. We'd love to come visit for a day or two. It's been too long. That was it. No acknowledgement of the silence. No apology. Nothing about the years of manipulation or the $10,000 they burned through like it belonged to them. Just warmth, pasted over rot. I stared at the message for almost an hour before answering. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Another part, smaller, weaker, more dangerous, still wanted to believe reconciliation was possible. So I said yes. One visit. One afternoon. No staying overnight. They arrived that Saturday in my father's SUV, looking painfully out of place on my block in Queens. I watched from the window before opening the door. Mom carried pastries.
Ella had a bag of snacks from home.
Dad looked irritated already, and Mia never looked up from her phone. Somehow, seeing them together in my tiny apartment made me feel like a stranger in my own life. We sat awkwardly in the living room, making shallow conversation.
Work. Traffic.
The neighborhood. Dad made a comment about how cramped my apartment was. Mom asked if I felt safe in the city, in the same tone people use when asking about war zones. Ella kept smiling too quickly, too brightly, like she was trying to hold a collapsing wall together with politeness. I could feel something coming. The room felt heavy with it. Finally, Mom cleared her throat and folded her hands in her lap. So, she said carefully, we wanted to talk to you about something important. There it was. Not, we missed you. Not, we're sorry. Something important. Mom glanced at Mia, who finally put her phone down. Mia got accepted into a nursing program in Arizona, she announced. I nodded slowly. It's a really good school, Ella added immediately. Very competitive. Mom continued. Her scholarships cover some of it, but not enough. I stayed silent. Dad crossed his arms. And then came the real reason for the visit. We were hoping, Mom said gently, that you could help her get started financially. I already knew where this was going, but hearing it still made my stomach twist. How much? I asked quietly. Nobody answered immediately. Then Ella said it like she was afraid to say the number too loudly. 45,000. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because the audacity physically stunned me. You drove all the way here to ask me for $45,000? Mom gave me that same patronizing smile she always used when she thought I was being emotional. We thought it was more respectful to ask in person. Respectful. The word almost made me sick. I stood slowly. My heart was pounding so hard, it hurt. None of you called me for 7 months, I said. Not once. The second I stopped sending money, I stopped existing to you. Tessa, Ella started. No, I snapped. You don't get to come into my home pretending this is about family. Mom's expression hardened. This is about Mia's future. No, I said quietly. This is about access. Mia rolled her eyes dramatically. You act like we're strangers. I looked at her in disbelief. You treated me like one first. Dad finally spoke, voice flat and impatient. You're not married, no children, no real financial responsibilities. You can afford to help. That sentence did something irreversible inside me. No real responsibilities. As if my life only mattered when measured against what I could provide for other people. As if my exhaustion, my rent, my survival in this city meant nothing. I walked to the front door and opened it. You need to leave. Mom stared at me. You're seriously throwing us out? You didn't come here to reconnect, I said. You came here to make a withdrawal. Ella looked horrified. Dad muttered something under his breath. Mia grabbed her phone angrily. And suddenly the room was chaos. Everyone talking over each other, acting wounded, offended, betrayed. The pastries sat untouched on my counter, still sealed inside their pretty bakery box. Just another peace offering designed to soften exploitation. Eventually, they left. No hugs. No resolution. Just tension thick enough to choke on. The moment the door closed behind them, the apartment went silent again. But this silence felt different. Cleaner. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty. 3 weeks passed after that visit. Nothing. Then the request started again. First, Mia. Hey, can you spot me $200? I'm in a bind. No apology. No shame. Just money. I ignored it. 2 days later, Ella needed rent help. Just this once, I swear. That phrase had become meaningless. A week later, Mia sent another message containing only $350. Not even a sentence. Like I was customer service. I stared at the screen for a long moment before deleting the entire conversation thread. Then I stopped replying completely. No explanations. No arguments. No defending myself. Just silence. And that should have been the end. But families like mine hate losing control more than they hate losing people. About a month later, I ran into my cousin Rachel at a bar near my apartment. We hadn't seen each other in years, but she recognized me instantly and dragged me over to her table. At first, it was normal conversation.
Work.
Life. The city. Then, halfway through her drink, she tilted her head and asked carefully, "So, is it true you cut everyone off?" I frowned. "What?" Rachel hesitated. "My aunt's been telling people you changed after moving here, that you think you're better than the family now." I felt something cold spread through my chest. Apparently, at family gatherings, my parents had been telling everyone I abandoned them. Dad said I became selfish after moving to New York. Ella told relatives I had turned cold. And Mia claimed I cared more about strangers than blood. Not one of them mentioned the stolen money. Not one. They rewrote the entire story. I wasn't the daughter they exploited. I was the villain who abandoned her struggling family. I sat there staring at Rachel while the noise of the bar blurred around me. "They said all that?" I asked quietly. Rachel nodded slowly. "I didn't really believe it," she admitted. "That's why I asked." I walked home alone that night under freezing rain, feeling strangely calm. Not devastated. Not furious. Just clear. Finally, painfully clear. It wasn't just the money. It wasn't just the manipulation. It was the fact that even after everything, they still needed to make me the bad guy to protect themselves from guilt. That was the moment something inside me finally let go. When I got home, I blocked every single one of them. Mom, Dad, Ella, Mia. Group chats, social media, everything. Not out of revenge, out of survival. Then I opened the spreadsheet tracking every dollar they'd taken from me. I stared at it for a long time. Months of proof. Pain reduced to numbers. Finally, I deleted it. I didn't want to carry the weight anymore. Because the truth was, I didn't miss my family. I missed the version of them I spent years pretending existed. For a while after that, life became strangely peaceful. Not perfect. Peaceful. There's a difference. I stopped waking up with anxiety every time my phone buzzed. I stopped checking my bank account like I was bracing for impact. I stopped rehearsing imaginary arguments in the shower, trying to defend boundaries nobody in my family ever intended to respect. The silence no longer felt like punishment. It felt like recovery. Queens slowly started feeling less temporary and more like home. Kyle helped me repaint my apartment one rainy weekend, and we spent half the day arguing over paint colors before accidentally splattering each other like children. At one point, he leaned against the ladder, smiling at me softly. "You laugh more now," he said. That hit harder than he probably realized. Because I hadn't even noticed. I had spent so many years surviving my family that I forgot what I sounded like when I wasn't afraid of disappointing someone. A month later, Kyle invited me to dinner with a few of his friends. Nothing fancy. Tiny restaurant, loud music, too many people squeezed around one table. And yet, the entire night felt surreal to me. People paid for their own meals. Nobody guilted anyone. Nobody kept score. Nobody treated generosity like ownership. When one of Kyle's friends covered the appetizer bill, nobody acted indebted afterward. Nobody turned it into emotional leverage. I remember sitting there, quietly realizing healthy people gave without expecting permanent access in return. That realization hurt more than I expected. Because once you see dysfunction clearly, you can't unsee it. Weeks passed. Then months. And slowly, I stopped checking for messages that would never come. Until one afternoon in early spring. I was leaving work when an unknown number called me. Normally, I ignored unknown calls, but something made me answer. Tessa? I froze instantly. It was Ella. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then she sighed shakily. Mom's in the hospital. Every protective wall inside me tightened immediately. What happened? She collapsed at work, Ella said quickly. Stress, exhaustion. They're keeping her overnight for observation. Guilt arrived exactly the way my family trained it to. Fast.
Sharp. Automatic.
Ella's voice softened. She keeps asking about you. Of course she does, I thought bitterly. Not when I was struggling. Not when I moved away alone. Not during birthdays or holidays. Now. I almost said no immediately. But despite everything, some wounded part of me still loved my mother. That was the cruel thing about family damage. Love doesn't disappear just because trust does. So the next morning, I took the train back. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and stale coffee. I found Mom sitting upright in bed, looking smaller than I remembered. Older, too. For one dangerous second, seeing her weak cracked something open inside me. Then she smiled tearfully and whispered, "My girl." And suddenly I was 10 years old again, desperate for approval. Ella stood near the window, pretending to give us privacy. Dad sat stiffly in the corner, reading messages on his phone. Mia arrived 20 minutes later, complaining about parking before even asking how Mom felt. Nothing had changed. Not really. Mom held my hand dramatically while explaining how stressful things had been lately. Medical bills, Dad's hours getting cut, Mia struggling with school applications. The conversation moved exactly where I knew it would. Not immediately. Gradually. Like watching a familiar storm roll in. Then finally, we just need a little help getting back on our feet. There it was. Even here. Even now. I looked down at my mother's hand wrapped around mine and felt something inside me go completely still. Not angry. Not emotional. Just finished. "Mom," I said quietly, "did you ask me here because you missed me?" Silence filled the room instantly. Ella looked away first. Dad sighed heavily. Mia crossed her arms. And my mother. My fragile, exhausted, hospitalized mother hesitated. That hesitation answered everything. Tears filled her eyes almost immediately. "How can you ask me that after everything I've been through?" There it was.
Deflection.
Guilt.
Victimhood.
The same dance, different setting. I slowly pulled my hand away. "You didn't call me for almost a year," I said calmly. "Not once. The only times I've heard from this family since moving were when somebody needed money." "Tessa," Ella whispered. "No," I said firmly. "I need you all to hear this." My voice shook, despite how hard I tried to control it. I spent years believing if I just gave enough, helped enough, sacrificed enough, eventually you'd love me the way I loved you. Mom started crying harder. Dad looked irritated now, like my honesty was inconveniencing him. "But that's not what happened," I continued. "You got comfortable taking from me, and when I finally stopped, you erased me." "That's not fair," Dad snapped. I looked directly at him. "You told people I abandoned the family." Nobody denied it. That hurt almost worse than hearing it the first time. Mom whispered weakly, "We were hurt." And I wasn't? The room went silent again. I stood slowly. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel small standing in front of them. I felt clear. "I hope Mom recovers," I said softly. "I truly do." Then I looked at all of them, one by one. But I can't keep setting myself on fire to keep this family warm. Mom broke down crying completely after that. Ella looked devastated. Mia looked annoyed. And Dad just stared at me like I had failed some invisible obligation. Maybe I had. Maybe the role they wrote for me was never daughter. Maybe it was provider. I walked out of that hospital room, shaking so badly I had to sit in the hallway for a minute before leaving. Outside, the air was cold and sharp against my face. I called Kyle while walking toward the station. The second he answered, he asked gently, "How did it go?" I stopped walking for a moment. Then I said something I never thought I'd be able to say out loud. "I think I finally let them go." There was silence on the line. Then his voice, soft and steady. "Good." Not because he hated them. Not because he wanted me isolated. But because he had watched what loving them was doing to me. Months later, I heard through Rachel that Mom recovered fine. Mia eventually went to community college nearby instead of Arizona. Dad picked up extra work. Life continued, without me funding it. And the shocking thing? They survived. All those years they acted like my money was the only thing keeping the family together. But once access disappeared, they figured it out themselves. Sometimes I still think about them. Usually late at night. I wonder if they ever tell the truth now when my name comes up. I wonder if guilt ever reaches them in quiet moments. I wonder if Mom still paints me as selfish. Maybe she does. Maybe that story helps her sleep at night. But I'm done carrying the burden of correcting people who benefited from misunderstanding me. I used to think cutting off family meant hatred. Now I understand sometimes it means grief. Grieving the mother you wanted. The sisters you defended. The home that never really existed. And maybe that's the hardest part. Not losing them. Realizing I never truly had them to begin with.